Everyone in Korea knows him. Witty and eloquent.
아니 지금 국영수 공부할 시간도 없는데 도덕은 왜 배워야 되고 문학은 왜 배워야 되고 미술은 왜 배워야 됩니까? 미술을 배우지 않고 음악을 배우지 않고 도덕을 배우지 않은 사람은 인간을 이해하지 못하기 때문에 국영수 공부도 똑바로 할 수가 없다.
A global cultural expert who speaks 7 languages. Jo Seung-yeon. The writer of a best-selling book that has sold more than 500,000 copies and a popular lecturer on TV shows. Today on Heart to Heart, writer Jo Seung-yeon. Hello and welcome to our show, Seung-yeon. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. Am I on the right set? Because as an author, I'm not used to set this shiny. You're not going to make me sing, are you?
You are on the right set and we will not make you sing.
Thank God. Okay.
Okay, well, before we begin our talk and before I ask you the questions I prepared for today's heart-to-heart interview, would you please say hello to our viewers?
Hello, my name is Seung-yeon. I'm an author of history books mainly and any other subject that interests me. Nice to meet you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for saying hello. So once again, you are in the right studio, so feel comfortable.
Okay.
All right.
No dancing, right?
No dancing,
Okay, great.
I promise. So you're a writer, an author who speaks 7 languages. You've written 25 books. I understand that you have appeared on television, and you are, as we speak. And you've given many, many lectures, and you still do give lectures. How would you describe yourself in one word?
I guess I'm a student.
A student.
I love that word. I want to be a student for the rest of my life. I don't mean student in a way that you're a student of a university or you're a student of a high school, but student in its original sense of the word, where you enjoy learning things and you're constantly reading books and going to art exhibitions, discussing about what you learned with other people. And that's what I want to do.
It's kind of the other way around. So
Right.
There's a different approach to it. Now, you said that you would describe yourself in one word as a student. I understand that you concurrently attended the NYU Stern Business School, the Juilliard School's evening division, so you took classes there. You went to France or Paris to learn French for 1 year, and I understand that you majored in medieval art as well. This is a lot of studying at many, many schools. So could you tell us about your academic background, your diverse academic background?
Well, when I went to college, right before I applied for college, I saw a movie called Wall Street. And I was very impressed by Michael Douglas's character. And I was like, that's what I want to do.
That's me. That's what I'm going to be.
Right. I want to be that evil, scheming businessman who handles billions of dollars. And that's why I applied to business school. And then when I got to business school, I realized that at the time, not many ladies were applying to business school. And there were maybe 2 ladies for every 8 gentlemen in my major. And one of the main reasons you go to college is to date.
Really?
So I asked some seniors, like, I want to take a second major, and what is an interesting second major? And they said, oh, it's accounting, it's law, etc. And I said, no, not that kind of interesting. Which majors have best ladies to gentlemen ratio?
Female students.
Right, out of all the NYU majors. And they said, that would be French or art history. And there you have it. But once I got into it, I realized then I was more interested in art than the girls.
I see.
And then I'm like, I want to pursue this deeper. And for the record, I only finished New York University. I did not get a degree from any of the other schools.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, that reminds me. Before we actually walked into the studio, we were talking about the schools you attended and what you studied. And you briefly mentioned that you don't necessarily think you have to go to a university or college to get a degree. For you, it's a slightly different story. You go to accomplish your goal and to fulfill your interests, perhaps?
Right. For me, it's like a hobby, right? So,
and you can leave school whenever you want to leave.
Right.
When you think you've learned what you wanted to learn.
So when I went to Paris, and the Louvre Museum offers an art history curriculum. And, why not? So I applied, I got in. I spent 2 great years there studying medieval art history. And then when I was done, I was done. I didn't feel like I had to stay there just because they were going to give me a piece of paper at the end of it.
Right.
Of course, if I was doing that as a career, maybe that would have been important.
Right.
But I already had a diploma, and for me, this was more like, I'm not going to stay in Paris and not learn about art. That would be stupid.
I see. So your book became a bestseller. This was when you were just 22 years old. And I understand that the book was written in very unusual circumstances. Can you tell us about that?
I guess if people ask me why I became a writer, I usually say I was too arrogant to get a real job. So I was about 21, and I was sophomore in college, and that's when Asian financial crisis hit.
Ah, I see.
So my family was not really wealthy enough to send me to one of the most expensive schools in the States. And when the currency balance shifted, that dollar was worth 3 times as much as it did a year ago,
Yes.
my dad said, okay, son, that's it. Either you come back to Korea or try to make do with what you got there. So I got kicked out of school because I couldn't pay my tuition.
I see.
I got kicked out of my dormitory room.
Oh, no.
And then at the time, I met a Iranian friend who had an uncle who sort of, I'm not sure, but he sort of smuggled
Okay.
Persian carpets into America. I'm not exactly sure what he did, but he had a old rundown building and he let me stay in the basement.
Oh, I see.
And it turned out to be a container,
Okay.
right?
Oh.
Container modified into a home.
I see.
And it was sitting on a port somewhere. So I was staying there, and then I basically said to myself, I have 2 choices. I can either just sit here and be bored. The most uncomfortable thing about being in that situation is not the physical discomfort, it's just you cannot go out because you have no money.
I see.
And either I can sit there and be bored, or I can do something to improve my situation. And I just started jotting things down that I always thought. I printed them out, put them in an envelope. I sent it to about 400 different publishing companies because I thought there was strength in numbers. 398 rejections.
Wow.
And one of them called me back. And that's how I sort of became a writer.
That's amazing. So you started just writing things down, writing your thoughts down. Do you remember the first thoughts that you started writing down, just jotting down? What were the thoughts about?
I think at the time, I was surprised at the time, about 200,000 Korean students were coming over to US to study. And I went to high school in the US and college, but most kids were arriving after having graduated Korean high school. And I was surprised how unprepared they were in terms of writing essays, in terms of expressing their own opinion, in terms of being able to engage in debate with their fellow students. So that's what I wrote about.
Oh.
And it sort of worked with the time because there was a study abroad boom at the time. And all the Korean students dreamed of going over to US to study. And I think I satisfied certain fantasy for these Korean kids who wanted to go to US one day.
Wow. So that book got published and it sold 500,000 copies. I mean, did you see that coming? How many copies did you imagine would sell or hope to sell?
I don't think anybody sees that kind of thing coming.
Really?
I mean,
Did you have hopes though? I mean, or expectations?
I thought maybe I would be able to get back to school. And even that was a far shot because American schools cost a fortune.
Tuition,
So
yeah.
maybe if I was very lucky, I thought I would be able to raise enough money so I can apply for another semester at NYU. But I didn't see that coming. And the lesson I learned from that experience is that you don't want to give that kind of money to a 21-year-old kid. It's a bad idea.
Why not?
Because it'll be gone in a year.
And was that money gone in a year?
Yes, that money was gone in a year.
What did you do with all that money?
Well, that's
what did you spend it on?
21-year-old kids, going out to bars with 20 friends and say, it's all on me. And then people cheer and you're like, yes, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
And then you don't ever see any of those friends again. You know?
They're gone. They're like, okay, goodbye. So I know that the book has had a great impact on your life, and you've experienced many changes. You've experienced many interesting things. Now, what kind of message do your books deliver to the readers, or what kind of message do you hope to deliver to your readers?
I think my biggest asset is the fact that I've been a foreigner all my life. So being a foreigner all your life, and I'm sure you can, empathize a little bit on this point.
Or what exactly do you mean by being a foreigner?
Well, I was a Korean in the U.S., and I wasn't in a diverse town like New York. Well, later I was in New York, but in the beginning I was in Michigan. So it was a very homogenized, white American suburb. So I was an outsider, right? And when I went to Paris, most of the art history students in Paris come from very old families. They're very, very français, in the most stereotypical way they can be. So, of course, this Americanized Korean kid who walks into this Louvre Palace is also an outsider, right?
Right.
But when I got back to Korea, I felt that Korea is a very insider-oriented society. And its openness to outsiders is not, where I think it should be. So most of my books talk about the value that outside brings. So when you try to divide, oh, this is Korean, so this is ours, and that's just somebody else's, it also blocks your learning.
I see.
Right? So when you open up and say, okay, you and I are different, and because we are different, we can exchange ideas and we can learn from each other, then there's a development, there is a growth. So my first book was a criticism of Korean education system, and obviously there are many good things about Korean education system. But when I was in the US, because I was coming from a different environment, I could see what we could learn from the American education philosophy. And I tried to bring that. And I didn't try to make a point that because it is, how Korean people say, advanced nation. It's not because America is more advanced than we are that we can learn from them. It's because they're different than us that we can learn from them.
I see. So, you said that you're working on your 8th foreign language. Which languages do you speak? Because I know you speak 7 different languages.
Okay, it's Korean, English, French, Italian, German, Chinese, and I like to count Latin to inflate the numbers, although nobody speaks Latin really, but I can travel with somebody, and if there's a Latin inscription on an old building, I can tell them what it says.
Cool.
So that's the utility of that language and where it ends. And now I'm working on Japanese.
It's very interesting. Now, is there like a transition period to switch from one language to another? There are times when you need to switch from Korean to English, and you may even have to switch to Japanese from English. Does it just happen automatically for you?
No, it's very, very hard, actually. One of the things I hate when I go on TV program is that they're like, could you say hello in 5 different languages? And I do it for the spectators, but for me, there's always like a switch cost. So for example, let's say I go to my brother's home in New York and I stay 2-3 weeks with them, and I get on an airplane and I'm on the way back, and the flight attendant asks me, what do you want to eat in Korean? I'll be like, huh? Because I'll be assuming that she'll be speaking English, and then it'll take me a few minutes to adjust. So right now I'm actually having a very difficult time because I was speaking Korean right before I got on the set.
Yes.
So my English will be smooth by the time we're done. And that won't really help us.
You're doing fine. You're doing wonderfully. You sound very natural. And your English is almost fluent.
Oh,
You
thank
studied
you.
in the States for so many years. And it's amazing how you can speak so many foreign languages, because I know for a fact that for many people, or for most people, it's not easy. Speaking one language is difficult sometimes. Learning a second language is very difficult for some people. But 8 languages,
I think it
for
accelerates
you.
after the second.
You think?
Yeah.
No, it's easy for you to say. This reminds me of something I read about you as well. People think that you were born genius, born smart. But then again, I heard that you mentioned that maybe this was in elementary school. You got very low grades on math tests. So you were terrible in math
And Korean.
back in school and Korean.
Yes, my Korean grade was about 32 out of 100. My math was about 50 percentile.
Okay, not so bad, 50.
Well, that's pretty bad. I think everybody's a genius in some way. And I am fortunately talented in one thing. And one thing I'm talented in is I can arrive in a new country.
Yes.
I can observe how people speak, how they gesticulate, how they share food, how they interact with each other. And I can copy them very, very quickly. That's the gift I have. And I'm not very good at math. Now, if the school judged me only based on math score,
Yes.
I would be a terrible student.
Uh-huh.
But you know what a lot of Korean parents do? When their kids are terrible at math, they give them math lessons.
Yes. They get them a tutor, right?
Right.
Private tutor.
And then this kid, instead of developing what they're talented in, they spend all their time drilling at things that they're not going to be good at anyways because that's not their thing.
I see.
And I thank my parents because they had that foresight to say, okay, this kid is gifted in language and not in math. So we're not going to give him math lessons, we're going to give him Latin lessons. And if they didn't make that choice, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you today.
You wouldn't be
and
here
that'd be
today.
a good, big loss.
Okay. Not only did the book that you wrote at 22 become a bestseller, many of your other books became bestsellers. Today with us on Heart to Heart is best-selling author Seung-yeon Jo. So let's take a look at what he shares with his readers.
사람들이 지금 굉장히 거창한 단어로 스토리텔링이라고 부르는 그 무엇인가요? 스토리라는 것은 무엇이냐면은 그냥 내가 좌충우돌하면서 실수했다가 오른쪽으로 갔다가 막히면 왼쪽으로 가고 왼쪽으로 갔다가 아니다 싶으면 뒤돌아서 이쪽으로 갔다가 갑자기 화면이 나오네 그러면은 사람들이 이쪽에 있구나. 그러면서 그냥 살아온 얘기가 스토리예요. 스토리가 영어로 그냥 이야기라는 뜻이잖아요. 왜요? 그럼 이야기를 만들려면은 어떻게 해야 돼요? 주어진 대로 가면 안 되죠. 그냥 막 가야 돼요. 그래서 오늘 제가 강의 주제를 갖다가 얘기하라고 그럴 때 제가 강의 주제를 이렇게 얘기했어요. 나처럼 살아도 괜찮아.
Now, not only do you share your thoughts through your books, you share your thoughts through your lectures as well. You give lectures. I heard that you also tell your audience not to, this is very interesting, not to set goals. What do you mean by that?
Korea is a very goal-driven society. And I think part of the work of a writer or a lecturer is to open up people to other possibilities. In my life, I learned that nothing works out the way you plan it. And even when things work out the way you plan it, you might not like it. So I wanted to be a financier. That didn't work out because my parents had financial difficulties. So I went to France where school was free. And I had a great few years studying art history on French taxpayers' expense, thank you. And after that, I thought I would, get married and have children and move to a small countryside farm. That didn't happen. I went to the army. And then right now, the life I'm living right now, that was not predictable even 4 years ago, right? So if you make too many plans, making plans is fine, but if you put too much into those plans, when those plans get broken, you become broken.
I see.
So what I try to tell people is that goals are goals and they're good to have them, but you are you. When goals break, it doesn't mean you broke. Goals and you are separate. That's what I try to tell people. Because in Korea, kids are taught that what you accomplish is who you are. But I learned in my life that accomplishment has a lot to do with the luck.
I see.
And a lot to do with the way the wind blows and way the waves.
Going with the flow.
Yeah. So, I try to tell people to relax a little bit because tensing up usually doesn't really get you anywhere either.
So I guess it's important to relax and try to be optimistic. Look
Right.
on the bright side and not be pessimistic, I guess.
You have a goal. I love that English saying, shoot for the sky and settle for the clouds. I love that saying. It's like, you can have big goals.
Sure.
But if you don't end up in the sky, you end up on a cloud, you're like, hey, it's cushy here.
It's good enough.
Why not?
Yeah, be happy with what you have, right? All right. Now, do you plan to give more lectures? I'm sure you're planning to give more lectures. I know that you have probably not set goals as to how many lectures you will have in the future.
Yeah, that's exactly what I tell people not to do, right?
Yeah. So what's your nearest future plan, though?
Mastering my Japanese, and then I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
The last year I studied ancient Chinese, and that was a very edifying experience. I feel Asian again. And this year I'm studying Japanese, and that's a life-changing experience as well. So for me, a project is not so much like I'm going to lecture this much, I'm going to do this TV appearance, I'm going to publish this many books. That's an effect of what I do. What I really did last year was I got acquainted with Confucian classics, and it was a great thing in my life. What I'm doing this year is I'm learning Japanese, the closest related language to Korean, and that's changing my life. Those are the things that I plan for, those are the things I can control. And if great book comes out of that and people love me for it, thank you. And if I wrote what I learned and people don't like it, oh well, I learned something in the process and I'm happy anyways.
I see. But there's got to be one thing that you hope to do before you die.
Yes, the bucket list. The bucket list question.
Yes, what would that be?
I want to buy a biplane.
A biplane.
Yes. You know, like the biplane that Charlie Brown.
Yes. Why
Okay.
do you want to buy a biplane?
Do you know the book Little Prince?
Little Prince, yes.
Do you like it?
I think everyone.
Yeah, everyone likes it. So the writer of Little Prince, Sang-Tewksbury, he was a male pilot, right?
Yes.
So when I was young, my mom bought me two books. One was the Southern Courier, and another was The Night Flight. And since then, this image of a lone rider pilot, fighting against the darkness and loneliness in the night sky on this fragile canvas wood-built frame that is sort of floating in the air, you know, that has fascinated me.
Why is it that I can imagine you on this biplane?
Like with a leather hat and
Yes.
and the goggles, with a little maybe little Snoopy in the back.
In the back seat, yes.
Yeah. So that image has just haunted me since I was about 8. So one thing I want to do is buy a biplane and cross Africa using the same route that Sang-Tewksbury used to get from Paris to Mali.
I see. And finally, we're down to our last question, and it happens to be, what does language mean to you?
Language, for me, is, well, there's a guy who said it better than me, so I'm going to quote him. You know Charles the Great?
Yes.
Charles the Great emperor who ruled over modern-day France, Germany, Italy, where all those three countries are right now. To know two languages is to have two souls. And I agree with that quote. Because I have a brother who lives in New York. If I call him Hyung, there's an obvious age element to it.
Right. Hyung meaning brother in Korean.
Hyung is somebody older than you.
Yes.
And Dongseung is somebody younger. So
right.
when I'm like Hyung, it's like pay for the meal, right?
Well, that's what you would call him Hyung.
Right.
Yes.
Because in Korea, usually the older brother gets the bill,
Usually,
right?
yes.
But if I call him brother, brother is a gender-based word. So you have Hyung or Dongseung based on age, and you have brother and sister based on gender. So when I'm wrestling against my brother, he's more like a brother and less like a Hyung, right?
Yes, yes.
So he's the same person, but when I call him Hyung, I form a different relationship with him than when I call him brother. So that's what language is to me. It's many ways of looking at one thing, and if you look at one thing in many ways, in my opinion, the colors are brighter, music's more beautiful, the smell's more sharp. Your life just becomes richer because you can look at it in many different ways.
Wow, it's very interesting. Thanks to you, I now have a slightly different perspective on learning as well as language. You gave us a great example, 형 and like brother and 동생. And I wish you the best of luck in the future with everything you do. And I hope you become a pilot and fly to wherever you wish to fly to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.